All right, today we're diving into one absolutely brutal moment from the First Jewish-Roman War, all told through the eyes of the historian Josephus. It's this incredible story about how one tiny little victory for a rebellion triggered a massive, and I mean massive, Roman overreaction. And in doing so, it kind of reveals a powerful secret about military psychology.
So how did Rome really conquer its enemies? We usually picture these huge pitched battles, right? Brute force, superior tactics, the whole 9 yards. But what if their greatest weapon wasn't actually the sword? What if it was something, well, something far more intimidating? That's the core question we're going to dig into.
So our story kicks off in the hills of Galilee. Now, this place was a real hotbed of rebellion against Roman rule. A local Roman commander, a guy named Placidus, he decides he's going to crush the resistance in one quick, clean blow. But yeah, he makes a pretty critical miscalculation.
Placidus had what he thought was a simple plan, a lightning-fast march on Jotapata, which was the most fortified city in the whole region. He figured, a surprise attack would take it easy, he'd get some personal glory, and it would scare the rest of Galilee into just giving up. He could not have been more wrong.
And this quote from Josephus really gets to the heart of it. The defenders of Jotapata, you see, they weren't just soldiers. These were people fighting for everything they had. They knew the attack was coming, and they met the Romans with this incredible ferocity, precisely because their entire world was on the line.
So you get this fascinating mismatch. The Romans, they're decked out head to toe in armor, but they are caught completely off guard. The Galileans, on the other hand, are lightly armed, but they're ready, there are a lot of them, and they are fighting with a kind of desperation the Romans just can't match. In this case, preparation and pure passion just steamrolled technology and training.
In the chaos that followed, the Romans were actually forced to retreat. Now get this, here is the number that must have sent shockwaves all the way back to Roman command. 7. Just 7 Roman soldiers were killed. And look, I know that doesn't sound like a huge number, but for the legions, these guys were supposed to be invincible. Losing anyone in a surprise assault like this, that was a massive, massive humiliation.
And the cost for the defenders? Only 3 men. Can you believe that? So Placidus, soundly beaten and not even able to start a proper siege, was forced into this humiliating retreat. The Galileans had just won a stunning victory, but in doing so, well, they had just poked the hornet's nest.
Right, so news of this embarrassing little defeat travels fast, and Rome's response isn't to send another small detachment. Oh no, it's to unleash its primary instrument of power, the imperial army, led by the future emperor himself, Vespasian. The entire game was about to change.
This wasn't a regional skirmish anymore. This was the empire bringing its full, terrifying weight to bear. Vespasian gathered his legions, his auxiliaries, his cavalry, his war machines, the whole shebang. He wasn't just marching to another battle. He was marching to erase the very idea of rebellion from the hills of Galilee.
And this is where Josephus gives us this incredible, detailed look inside the Roman war machine. To understand how Rome really conquered, you have to understand how it moved. See, it wasn't just an army. It was a mobile city of destruction, organized with absolutely terrifying precision.
I mean, the precision here is just staggering. Okay, so picture this. First, you've got your scouts, the auxiliaries and archers, clearing the way, making sure there are no ambushes. Right behind them, the engineers. These guys are literally building a Roman road as they go, paving a highway through the wilderness. Then comes the command staff, Vespasian himself surrounded by his best guards. After that, you get the heavy hitters, the mules hauling the massive siege engines. And only then, finally, do you see the heart and soul of the army, the legions, marching in perfect formation, 6 men deep, with that sacred eagle standard leading the way. And to top it all off, a heavily armed rear guard, making sure nothing can touch them from behind. It's like a moving city of destruction, an absolutely unstoppable, self-contained system.
And the psychological part of this was so crucial. Leading that main body of troops was the eagle. Now, this wasn't just a flag. To the Romans, it was this sacred symbol of their divine right to rule. It was a promise of victory. But to their enemies, it was an omen of absolute doom. So, Vespasian marches this terrifying procession right up to the borders of Galilee. He sets up his camp, and then he just waits. He understood something profound. The spectacle of the march, this overwhelming display of organized power, was itself a weapon of psychological warfare. And this brings us right to the climax of the story. So what happens? What happens when that passionate courage that won the day at Jotapata comes face to face, not with a small, overconfident detachment, but with the systematic, grinding terror of the Roman Empire on the move? Well, the answer is just devastating.
Josephus, who was actually commanding the main Galilean army at this point, says his soldiers just melted away. The rumors, the sight of the preparations, the sheer idea of what was coming over the hill was enough. They fled, before they even laid eyes on a single Roman soldier. The will to fight was completely shattered.
The war for Galilee was basically over before the second battle ever even began. All that was left was to watch the psychological collapse of the rebellion's own leadership.
So Josephus, the brilliant commander who had fortified all those cities, now finds himself practically alone. His army is just gone. He writes that the spirits of the Jews were sunk, and he could see that most of them would surrender if they were just given the chance. That incredible momentum from Jotapata had completely vanished.
And in this final crushing admission, we see the true power of the Roman machine. It didn't just defeat armies, it defeated hope itself. That methodical, terrifying display of power had achieved what a messy battle never could: total psychological dominance.
So we're left with this question, aren't we? This whole story reveals this timeless principle of power projection, a kind of ancient shock and awe. And it suggests that maybe the most effective weapon isn't always the one that sheds blood, but the one that convinces your enemy through an overwhelming display of systematic force that they have already lost.